to check to make. I'm sorry.
I said, just give me 1 second to start.
All right.
Okay, we're ready to go.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Today, we will be introducing legislation to roll back the Public Utility Commission's proposed income graduated fixed fee. Electricity rates have skyrocketed throughout the state. Over the last 10 years, PG&E rates have gone up 127%, 91% in Edison's territory and 72% in SDG&E's. And now the PUC is considering proposals of up to $125 a month for income graduated fixed fee. Our constituents have had enough, and so have we. It's time to put some reasoning back into how we charge for electricity in California. An income graduated fee is impractical for a number of reasons. First, it would be nearly impossible to implement given the many legal and privacy challenges that there would undoubtedly be to accurately determine every taxpayer in the state's income, every ratepayer's income. People's incomes change from year to year and would require the PUC to annually determine every ratepayer's income. The administrative burden to implement such a policy is mind-boggling, and that is before considering the cost of such an exercise. As I mentioned earlier, and it doesn't take a genius to see, the PUC does not have a great track record of keeping costs down. Our bill would roll back the mandate for income graduated fixed fee and return to the prior law, which would allow the PUC to establish a fixed fee with a cap of $10 and $5 for the CARE program. Further, it would allow the PUC to conduct a thorough analysis of options to pay for fixed costs and have to pay for fixed costs and lower electricity rates without a hard deadline. This deadline is this June, which is really rushing the process. We would like to see an open and considerate process. It is essential that we lower our rates in order to meet our climate goals. And before I turn it over to my colleagues, I want to provide an example of the type of cost savings that should be considered. A study from the Public Advocate's Office 2023 annual report shows that, quote, encouraging electric vehicle charging at optimal times can dramatically reduce necessary distribution grid upgrades and associated costs, end quote. In fact, the study went on to say that electrification could result in downward pressure on electric rates. With more rigorous planning and forecasting, the PAO estimates savings of $26 billion compared to PUC estimates. These are the type of discussions that we need to be having. And now I would like to introduce Senator Scott Wiener to make some brief remarks.
Thank you, Assemblymember Irwin, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. The plan being proposed by utilities and being considered at the CPUC honestly is outrageous, and it needs to be withdrawn. After raising rates this month to pay for an undergrounding effort that should have happened years ago, after resuming paying dividends to shareholders, after every major utility in California has doubled electricity rates over the past decade, after SoCalGas was caught using ratepayer funds to pay for lobbying regulators to let them charge higher rates to those same ratepayers, after letting aging grid infrastructure rust in the field for decades while making generous payments to shareholders, these same utilities have submitted another brilliant proposal. Under the plan proposed by our investor-owned utilities, millions of Californians will pay as much as $830 per year more for electricity than they do now. Not just wealthy people, middle-class, working-class people, anyone who can't prove that they are low income. All households that are not on a subsidized payment, reserved only for the lowest income Californians, would pay a fixed charge between $51 and $73, depending on their income, plus a variable rate on top. The size of that proposed fixed charge is offensive. It's 4 to 6 times the median fixed charge used by other utilities, which is typically $12. This fixed charge would sweep in millions of households that are desperately struggling with rising costs in so many areas of life. The threshold to qualify for relief is $60,000 or lower for a family of four. So a family of four with $70,000 annual income, which is tough in California, and many families find a way to do it, but they're already stretched and they will have to pay this higher fixed charge, all while shareholders are being paid. This is not acceptable. The CPUC needs to withdraw this proposal, needs to tell the IOUs to get real and come back with a proposal that actually works for Californians, that focuses our utilities on being safe and providing reliable electricity without continually jacking up rates. And I want to say that PG&E is the worst here, but without continually jacking up rates for California ratepayers and continually then investing so heavily in lobbying in this building against any effort to actually protect ratepayers or provide more reliable service. I now want to bring up Assemblymember Chris Ward.
Great. Thank you, Senator Wiener and Assemblymember Irwin, for your leadership. Good morning. I'm happy to join my colleagues this morning to announce legislation to repeal portions of Assembly Bill 205, which set in motion the income-based fixed charge for utility bills currently underdeveloped by the California Public Utilities Commission. So I heard throughout my district this fall during our recess a wide spectrum of constituents having real concerns with the details of this proposal, and these perspectives I share. In San Diego, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics recently confirmed, despite, I think, the challenges that we're seeing with other utilities across the country, that we at San Diego Gas and Electric are actually paying the highest utility bills in the country. We do need to think about ways to keep costs down and reduce rates for users, and especially think about supporting working families and middle-income Californians struggling to afford the necessities to live here. But as the proposals came to the PUC, it became more clear that the parameters set up by Assembly Bill 205 would create more administrative expenses and drive up rates, further threatening rooftop solar incentives and reducing conservation behaviors, shared energy goals that must be promoted, not reduced. So we're going to look forward to other strategies that can inform legislation to reduce costs and rates, but stopping what is put in motion already is the right thing to do before serious consequences result. Repealing parts of AB 205 is just the first step, but an urgent one. And I'm proud to stand here today as a co-author of this effort to stand up for ratepayers in my district and across California. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague from Orinda, Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan. I represent the 16th Assembly District in the East Bay. And we want Californians to know that we hear you and we agree with you. Utility rates here in California are too damn high. And we're here because we've had enough and we're ready to take action. In addition to the rising rates, we face a situation where the ways that California families today drive down their personal costs are being taken away from them. Like many of you probably, I grew up hanging clothes on a clothesline so we didn't turn on the dryer, and our utility rates were just a little bit cheaper to make us make ends meet every month. And that, under the new proposal, would be harder for California families, and that's not okay. Conservation is important because it's important to our climate goals, and it's important to California families. So we're here to say we're taking on the fixed charges proposed at the PUC, and we've got Californians' backs. I want to thank Assemblymember Irwin for her incredible leadership on this legislation. And I want to say that these issues, as you heard from Senator Wiener, are symptomatic of a larger problem, where the PUC is greenlighting every single rate increase that we see coming out of these IOUs across the state. So we need to look long and hard at how the PUC is doing this, why they are doing it, and how we drive rates down for Californians. Because as everybody here knows and everybody listening sees every day, it is getting harder and harder to live in California with the charge of necessities like your electricity going up every single month. And so we need to take action and drive costs down and make California more affordable and more livable for everybody in our great state. So I'm proud to stand with our colleagues here today from both chambers, across our caucus, to say we're going to take action. I want to thank all of you for your partnership and your leadership in doing what California needs us to do, which is to give them monthly rates that are affordable and adjustable. With that, I turn it over to Senator Blakespear for her remarks.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today to stand with the legislative leaders behind me, and I want to thank Assemblymember Irwin for her leadership on this topic. Like many who are here, I have received hundreds of complaints from constituents about the fixed rate charges that are planned by the utilities. Californians already pay some of the highest electricity bills in the country, and the proposed changes would create an additional burden. I'm concerned about the impact that this has on working families, on people with low to moderate incomes who could be faced with substantially higher electricity bills. And I'm also concerned, deeply concerned, about the negative impact on energy conservation. A fixed charge eliminates the incentive to conserve. And in fact, this makes it cheaper to consume more electricity. This is headed in the wrong direction. I support this legislation. This is a step in the right direction, and I want to thank again Assemblymember Irwin for introducing this bill. And next, I will hand it over to Assemblymember Ting. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blakespear, and really I also want to thank my great colleague from Thousand Oaks, Assemblymember Irwin, for really leading this issue. I think as we watched the deliberations at the CPUC over the fall, I think a number of us gave direct feedback to what we believed the direction that this should be taking. Having listened to our constituents, really listening to the stakeholders in our communities. And I think really what was the most concerning issue was it seemed that all the key stakeholder groups who normally are in front of the CPUC were being listened to, everyone but our constituents and everyone but the legislature. And I think that's why we are here today, because we are very concerned that we have unelected bureaucrats making decisions that are impacting every single ratepayer in this entire state, and with very little accountability. We have a fixed rate charge that seems to be unimplementable. You have a proposal that seems very difficult in the long term to actually achieve. And at the same time, you have an issue that is going to impact every single ratepayer up and down the state, and it's looking at potentially increase in costs. And so I think all of us are here saying that we want a much more transparent, deliberative process. We want a process that the legislature and our constituents can be involved in, and not just the companies and all the key stakeholders who normally stand in front of the CPUC. So again, really appreciate everything that everyone has said. We stand here really fighting for every single ratepayer in each of our districts, and proud to join all my colleagues here today. And with that, I'm honored to introduce my colleague, Assemblymember Pappan.
Good morning. I'm Diane Pappan, and I represent San Mateo County. And I want to just talk about how this proposal really affects struggling families, especially in my district. The median income in my district falls squarely within the range of incomes that will be subject to this increased charge. Now, when you add on the fact that in my district, the cost of living is 84%. That's right, 84% above what the national average is. So an additional $600+ is going to hurt struggling families in my district. And they have no means of adjusting what this fee will be, right? It's a flat fee. So you can't conserve more energy. You can't use energy at different times. It's not going to affect this additional charge on your bills. The proposal to the CPUC really ignores an economic reality. And I, too, have heard time and time again from constituents in my district. You know, we go back when we're not in session, we meet with constituents. We had a lot of coffees and whatnot. And I'm telling you, the bulk of the comments came about this additional fee on people's utility bills. I want to thank Assemblymember Irwin for taking the lead on this, for really highlighting the inequities of this proposal and helping us to all ensure that folks do not get hit with this additional flat fee. So I look forward to working with each of you. It's nice to be with you this morning. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Damon Connolly from Marin County.
Thank you, Assemblymember Pappen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Damon Connolly, proudly representing Marin and Sonoma counties in the State Assembly. I also want to thank all of my colleagues here for doing something that we're finding ourselves too often having to do these days, and push back against bad decisions by the California Public Utilities Commission, which have too often burdened Californians with higher utility rates. In my district, like my colleagues, this is literally the #1 decision that we're hearing about in our office, and that is that utility rates are simply too high for our working families right now. These costs are not sustainable, and they are unacceptable. Despite the hardships that are clearly affecting ratepayers throughout the Golden State, the CPUC continues to approve utility rate increases and is barreling forward with a new fixed charge design that will arbitrarily charge residents based on their income, not their energy consumption. In the North Bay, our residents, I think, can proudly and enthusiastically say we've embraced energy conservation measures, devices, and electric vehicles. Many residents in our districts are doing their part to create the cleaner future for California that we all envision. Despite the good work we've made, the CPUC's new rate structure will discourage exactly the kind of conservation that is needed to meet our clean energy goals and avoid rolling blackouts that have plagued our state. In addition to the NEM 3.0 decision that has gutted incentives for solar adoption and clean energy generation, it's time for the legislature to push back on these harmful decisions. So I stand here today in proud support of Assemblymember Irwin's proposal, and I will note right now that I will also be introducing additional legislation later this week to address NEM 3.0, so more coming on that. Again, a thank you to Assemblymember Irwin and my colleagues for your leadership. We will not move backwards on California's clean energy future. And with that, I would like to introduce Assemblymember Maritsuchi.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Al Maritsuchi, proudly representing the Los Angeles South Bay. And I think we're all seeing from throughout the state of California that Californians across the state are fed up with high utility fees. And so I'm proud to join my colleagues in calling for a repeal of the AB 205 utility tax. Under the proposal submitted by the California's utility companies, Californians can end up paying hundreds more per year for electricity than they already do now. High fixed charges encourage high electricity consumption and waste while punishing households that use less energy. Who would be punished by these high fixed charges? Apartment tenants, owners of small homes, and families who did the right thing for the planet by installing rooftop solar or making their homes more energy efficient. This doesn't make sense. To achieve a cleaner, more affordable, and more sustainable electricity market, we need to incentivize energy conservation and efficiency. We need to incentivize more rooftop solar as well as battery storage. We need to repeal the AB 205 utility tax. I'd like to turn it back to, turn it over to Assemblymember Berman.
Thank you, Assemblymember Maritsuchi. I'm Mark Berman. I represent the 23rd Assembly District, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County in the California State Assembly. I, too, want to thank my colleague, Jackie Irwin, for her leadership on this issue. Californians are fed up. My constituents are pissed off. I know because they told me over and over again at every community coffee that I had in the fall and in the winter. Their rates keep going up. The requests from the IOUs for rate increases keep going up. Their days without power keep going up. The PUC rubber stamping what the IOUs ask for keeps going up. But accountability keeps going down. Ratings, the grades that the IOUs are getting keep going down. In fact, in 2020, or just recently, the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety gave PG&E a failing grade on implementation of their 2020 wildfire mitigation plan. And so what's also gone up is the frustration amongst me and my colleagues in the legislature. And we're tired of seeing the PUC just continue to rubber stamp whatever the IOUs are asking for. We're tired of seeing stated and agreed upon policies by the legislature and the governor continue to get eroded by decisions that the PUC is making and by things that the IOUs are asking for. And you've heard that from my colleagues in terms of the impact that this has on rooftop solar, on distributed generation, on policies that we, the legislature, have said are priorities for California. So you're seeing here, this is, I don't know that I've seen this big of a group of colleagues at a press conference like this before, from up and down the state, because we're fed up. And we want to see improvements. And frankly, we're gonna take the power back. And that's what my colleague, Assemblymember Irwin, has introduced. That's what I'm proud to support. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm going to turn it back over to Assemblymember Jackie Irwin.
I want to thank all my colleagues, and this has really been a group effort. We've been working in the fall and all fall and having discussions with various stakeholders. I also want to say, not speaking here, but supportive is Assemblymember Pacheco, Dr. Weber, we have Assemblymember Quirk Silva, and we have Alex Lee. So it's not only... Oh, and you're standing right next to me, and Assemblymember Pellerin. So it's not only across the state, but across the entire political spectrum. And so we will be introducing this bill later on today. I have support from other colleagues that were unable to make it here today too. They wanted to make sure that they wanted their names mentioned: Laura Friedman, Eloise Reyes, Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. And a number of others that are very interested in seeing Assembly Bill 205.
10 senators.
And 10 senators. We have a letter that is going to be tweeted out by Senator Wiener with 10 senators that have signed it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So reading the text of AB 205, it looks like all of you voted for the CPUC to begin this process. So why the change in heart now?
AB 205 should have had a very robust conversation among all legislators, and to have it as a part of a huge trailer bill is, in my opinion, not appropriate.
So on that note then, I mean, should these policies be not in budget trailer bills?
That is... That is absolutely what we are all saying. This should have had a discussion in both houses, a thorough and robust discussion. Policy decisions should not be made at the PUC. They should be made by the legislative body.
It looks like the utility companies, or at least the advocates' offices and the utility companies, seem to say that part of the rate increases are because of programs passed out of this body. Just in response to that.
We want to make sure that we have oversight hearings, and the new chair of the Utilities Committee has committed to that. We really want to look at where the money that so far has gone to fire mitigation, and yet PG&E has a failing report. We want to see why that is happening and where money could be saved in other areas. We don't want to continue to have this be a fight between one group and another. We need to look at the overall ecosystem and see why these costs are so high.
And your legislation specifically, what does it do? Like, does it repeal AB 205 and cross out that text? Or?
Yeah, and the text is, it's about 4 lines, and it would repeal that. And then we would have a much more robust effort at looking what should a reasonable fixed cost be. And it would get rid of the income portion, except, of course, for the folks that are already in the CARE program. Thank you. Any other questions?
This was pitched as something that would help with equity. And you talk about conservation, but when there are people in the Central Valley who are having to use their air conditioners, it's not often it's not much of a choice whether they turn the thing on or not. And this has been described by supporters of it as something that would help them particularly versus the coastal folks who have a better climate. And how do you respond
Well, first of all, 30% of the population is already in the CARE program. The folks that are really going to be affected by this are the ones that are right outside of the CARE program. And when we look at climate change, it obviously affects everybody across the board, but it is especially difficult on a lot of the communities that live in those type of areas. So I think this cannot be a fight between one group of people and another group of people. We need to do everything we can, including supporting rooftop solar, supporting EVs to meet our climate goals. And I'll tell you personally, I have worked on bills that have looked at how do we get into these communities that are typically not using solar panels or EVs. We've done a thermal electricity bill a few years ago, and I was just able to get money in the budget to do a pilot program to bring EVs and EV infrastructure into a lower socioeconomic community. And those are the type of things that we absolutely have to do if we're going to meet our climate goals. We can't be messing around with this situation that has distracted all of us from what our real goals are: reasonable energy costs and making sure that we meet our 2035 goals across the board.
Do all of you buy the argument that with fixed costs, the volumetric rates will go down? Because you're talking about the increased cost, the Public Advocate's Office does support this. You mentioned some of their studies with the other savings that are possible.
What I was specifically referring to that the Public Advocate's Office talked about is having time of use on bills, and the PUC started that proceeding and interrupted it halfway to rush through this income graduated fixed cost. They should really look at, is there a way to drive down energy costs by having a time of use program in place for all three of the utilities. Right now, at least my utility, Edison, does not encourage or incentivize anybody to charge their batteries in the middle of the day. Those are the type of things that really make the grid much more resilient.
Madam Assemblymember, did I hear you mention that you're going to put this up for a vote today?
No. We're going to cross the desk today. No, we're not putting it up for a vote today. If I said that, I misspoke. I apologize. We've had a few discussions this weekend, but certainly in the fall we spoke to the energy person in the governor's office. We talked to the IOUs, we talked to the PUC, we talked to the solar folks. We've talked to a lot of groups across the board, and we really believe that these type of discussions should take place in the legislature so that we can all be a part of a decision and really realize, really look at what are the potential pitfalls and how do we keep costs down for the ratepayers. And okay, good.
Logistically, would your bill carry urgency? I mean, how soon could we see movement on this?
We would like it to carry urgency and have the PUC start focusing instead of trying to rush this decision through in really a relatively closed way. We have not been listened to. The public really isn't being listened to. We want to see an open process at the PUC. And we have sessions starting, so if there are any other, I want to make sure that we release all our colleagues. If there's any other questions for anybody individually, then please feel free. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Great job. Great job. It was
Okay.